I am Linda Lambert. I'm a member of Red Wheelbarrow Writers, and I am talking with Lisa Dailey, who is the publisher of the Red Wheelbarrow Writers' fourth anthology. And this is it. I love the cover,
Me too.
spring and all. And Lisa is also a writer herself, and we'll talk a little later about her book, which is called Square Up. It's quite an interesting read. I love it. I'm wondering about your road to becoming a publisher. Was that always something you envisioned, or did it just happen?
It really just kind of happened. And it started about 30 years ago, believe it or not.
Oh,
I moved out to Bellingham with the thought of going to college, going to Western Washington. I had been attending college in Montana for a few years, and I was ready to get out of small town and move out to Bellingham. But I
mhm.
moved out here and I fell into a job. And I fell into a job writing right during the peak as it was going into the dot-com boom. And I was writing technical manuals for computer software, how to use computer software. And this was right when DOS was becoming Windows. Windows was brand new. And so nobody knew how to use it. And so I fell into this job writing. And
Excuse me for interrupting, but how do you just fall into a job?
I just got, well, okay. I mean, I in college in Montana, I took a lot of computing courses and had some programming background. So I don't know. I maybe I impressed the boss. I don't know. I got the job, and I later learned that they told me that we just kept giving you tasks to see if you could do it. So I literally fell into it from this very small company in a little tiny office. We grew, and then the software company, which was based out of Vancouver, BC, asked if we could hire a translation team because they were expanding. And so we ended up hiring on translators and translating into 5 different languages. And so I was the
Oh,
head of the English writing department, and then we had all the other teams of translation. And one of those languages was Japanese. And Japanese, the product life cycle was about 4 months behind all of the rest of the languages because getting the kanji characters from the computer onto the plates to print was a manual process. It couldn't be done electronically, um, just due to the size really of the files that were produced. And I
hmm.
thought that there had to be a way to do it. And so my boss sent me to San Diego, and I took this programming class and I figured out how to do it. And so I came home and said, we can do it. We can cut the life cycle of the Japanese product cycle by 4 months. But you have to send me to Toronto to teach the printing press how to do it. So they sent me to Toronto, and I got to be on site and kind of oversee the whole Japanese of going directly from the computer to print, which had never been done. And the printing company asked to hire me right on spot, and I said, no, I like Billingham. And so I mean, it was fascinating though. It was a fascinating process of learning about the whole writing and publishing and how it all works together. And so from there, I mean, eventually I did go back to college, but not for years later. Um, and after I had kids, in fact, but I always kind of kept a foot in technology, and then ended up in my career using that same software product in my job, um, at doing software implementations. And then after I went on my trip, which is the book Square Up is about, I came home and didn't want to go back to a traditional job. And again, I had a friend who had a publishing company who was ready to move on. And I had done some work with her, and she's like, you're the perfect person to take over. And I kind of fell back into it. So it's like it's come full circle.
I'm amused by something you said. They kept giving me jobs to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And the next thing wasn't, yes, I learned how to do it, but it was you got the education. You never mentioned that you learned how to do it, but you did. And that's sort of been our experience with you around here. We say, I don't know how to do this, and you figure it out. And I think that's sort of an earmark of why you are successful. Spring and All, I think, is one of the best books that the best of the 4 anthologies that Red Wheelbarrow has published. But it's not the only book you've done. I think you've done quite a few, and I'm wondering if you got some numbers for me. How many books have you
Yeah,
done?
so
How long?
yeah, I took over the publishing company. I mean, I worked with Penchant Press Publishing for a couple of years, and then took over the company, bought it out from Jess. And in the time since I've had it, 4 to 5 years or so, I've produced about 45 books, about 55 can, if you count all the ebooks as well, 55 to 60, somewhere in there.
I don't have any comparison with what other on the small side publishers do, but I think that 10 books a year, 10 to 12 books a year or more is pretty significant. But you never come across as overworked. How do you balance all of this?
I have a really good team. I don't do it all alone for sure. I have found just some great partners that help me turn out the titles. I have a great proofreader, I have a great cover designer, and we all work really well together. So there's a whole team behind it. I also work closely with a publicist. So it's a really great team.
As usual, you give other people the credit. I happen to know that there's another dimension of your life, and that is writing yourself. So I referred to Square Up. And how about telling us a little bit about this book and how it came about? I know for a time you thought you wanted to be a travel writer. And of course, you're still traveling, and we can get into that too. But tell me about this book.
So that book came about. It was the book that had to get written. It wasn't the first book that I envisioned writing. The first book that I actually envisioned writing is the one I'm working on now, which I'm really struggling through. But there was a period of time in my life where I had a lot of loss. I lost 7 family members in a period of 5 months. Very
Mm,
close. My mom, dad, my younger brother to a drug overdose, and
mm.
a 16-year-old cousin to suicide. And so yeah, I was kind of lost in that. And at the same time, my husband and I had been planning um, to take sort of a sabbatical, a year off, and travel around with our kids while they were still, you know, in a place where they could travel easily too. So they were about 14 and 15, 8th and 9th grade in high school. And so we took off and traveled for a year around the world. Um, and it ended up being actually about 7 months. And when I came home, I think that there was a lot of lessons that I had to kind of think about and learn. And then the book just kept calling. So that's the one that got written.
It's a beautiful book. I have read it, and I like going on travels with you in print. I haven't been to any of your wayfaring writers trips, but why don't you say a little bit about that other business that you have?
Right. So as part of Red Wheelbarrow Writers, and then later as part of the Narrative Project, I've become really close friends with Cami Osman, who runs the Narrative Project. She's actually the reason I got this book done, because I took her class, and it was
Mhm.
invaluable to teaching me what I didn't know about writing, and really pushing me through getting the book done. And we have found through this friendship that we're both very avid travelers. We've both now written a book about travel, and we decided that we wanted to take excursions and take writers, and really show people what is possible when you travel, and how it changes your mind, and how it changes your outlook on pretty much everything. And so we've formed trips. Right now we take 1 trip a year. We had grander plans before COVID, but now that that kind of ruined, that kind of offset our first trip. But we're going back to Chile this December, and we've taken a couple of trips to Oaxaca, Mexico, and they've been really fabulous. In fact, I'm putting together an anthology of writing from everyone who traveled to Oaxaca with us. So,
Oh, I am looking forward to reading that. It seems like you attract authors from all over the place. Red Wheelbarrow was kind of the focus, but I noticed in Spring and All there are writers from elsewhere. So how does that happen?
right, we actually opened that up a little bit further beyond just Bellingham based Red Wheelbarrow. During COVID, we met primarily online with Red Wheelbarrow writers, and we were able to invite people who had moved away, who still wanted to be a part of it, and joined. A lot of people joined from all over the country, um, all over the world. Maybe, I'm not sure if there was anybody, but so we opened up the submissions to all those people, and because Cammie's such a big part of Red Wheelbarrow, all of her students we opened it up to as well. So
Mhm.
that then made our scope even wider.
Uh, how many writers were there who do you know how many writers there were who contributed to Spring and All? I didn't count them up.
I think there's about 40.
Hmm. How long did it take you to interface with all of them and edit the book? Tell us a little bit about that
So this is
process.
one book where I actually had very little to do with the editing process. Um, I opened up the call for everybody, but we had editors that from Red Wheelbarrow that were willing to do all the editing and work with all the authors. Um, so we had, I think, 8 editors that all worked with, and poets that worked with the poetry writers, and nonfiction writers that worked with the nonfiction editors. So there was a whole group of people that really had the bulk of the interface with the authors. You
Hmm.
know, the most I had was some emails back and forth, and contract signing, and then I've been able to send them, everyone who's not in the Bellingham area, a book. So
Would, excuse me, would you like to use that same way of producing a book? Because I'm sure there will be another Red Wheelbarrow book in the future.
oh, I'm sure. And even one of our editors, Laura Kalpakian, has expressed an interest in doing a couple of different anthologies. And so we're looking at that. And that's not necessarily Red Wheelbarrow. That'll probably extend to a much wider scope as well. But there's definitely some ideas in the works there.
Do you have much to do with the marketing?
Yeah, a little bit. I like to, do as much as I can for the author, because I think one thing authors don't realize is that a lot of the bulk of marketing, no matter which way you're published, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, traditional publishing, a lot of the marketing effort is going to fall on your shoulders. So I like to try and educate them in that respect. And as part of my process, I actually send my authors to work with a publicist to do an
Oh,
interview, find out the best way that they can market themselves, and provide a roadmap for them. Of course, if they want to do more, they can hire her to do more of the work for them. But I want to give them a roadmap for marketing so that they have the best success they can.
do you have any kind of manual, or is there a book that you recommend for writers with respect to marketing?
I think you already know the answer to that. I do have a manual. I have a Sidekick Press handbook that I give to all my authors when they come on
Well,
board.
well, I know about the style manual.
Oh no, this is a publishing handbook that I have for all the authors that come on.
Have I seen that? I don't think I
You
have.
haven't, but I would have guessed that you would have known I had.
Well, I want to look at it sometime. That's for sure. So what are you thinking about the future and the growth of your company and how you're going to manage it and what kind of books you're going to do?
Um, that's funny because I don't have grand visions of growing very large. I like staying kind of at the status quo that I'm at now. I like producing about 10 to 12 books a year, and
Hmm.
having that closer relationship with my authors. Um, but who knows? I don't know. Anything's possible.
Do you have a sense of how long it takes to do a single book? I mean, when you think about 10 books a year, you could say, well, that parses into something over a month for each book, but I'm sure that's not an accurate formula. So how do you gauge that? How long a book will take?
I don't. I don't.
Okay.
It's difficult to define because every book is different. So every book is going to have authors that require more or less work on their titles. Um, some will have a lot of editing that they need to do. Some will have not so much editing. If it's poetry, those are much smaller and so require much less time input.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to define how much time it takes. I do I give all authors a time frame though when they sign. It takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months to get everything done and produce a final book.
Mhm. And do they have to keep to that agreement, or is that just a guideline for them?
That's a guideline. If authors move a lot faster, I can move a lot faster, although I am somewhat dependent on my team as well. There are things that just take more time, especially my proofreader. She definitely needs a few weeks to get through everything. And if authors are really particular about the cover and can't quite decide what to do, and we have to go several rounds, that actually takes more time too. Sometimes we
Mhm.
hit on a cover and it's just perfect and we go with it. So, that time shifts. But if authors drag their feet and take a long time to do things, I don't hold to my deadlines either. It pushes everything out.
Oh, well, that's kind of difficult to work with, I would imagine.
I mean, as long as people are flexible and know that, I think that the time frame is a guideline, but if they can kind of hold to the dates that we set, then
Then it's way better. How was this one of the covers that just clicked right away, or did it take a while to get to it? Because I just love this cover. It's so
that
bright.
is one that clicked instantly.
Yeah.
We had some other options, and so I actually presented it to all the editors. We had mock-ups of about 6 or 7 different. The other ones were largely photographs also of kind of spring flowers and spring kind of coming out of the snow. And
Mhm.
um, I I threw that one in along with the others, and by I mean everyone was it was unanimous that that was the pick.
It's, marketing people always talk about something that needs to pop. And this really pops. When I
Hmm.
saw it, I thought, oh, this would stand out in any bookstore.
Hmm.
And I think everybody is proud to be in it. And also, you've designed templates for authors to send out to their audiences, and that's been great too.
Yeah, we have a great gal who does all of our social media um images, and so I had her create several for the books and sent them out for Facebook and Instagram to all the authors to share. So,
Uh, it's very effective, and I know there's probably by the time, well, no, there's a launch on the 11th of June, and I bet you will have this interview up. But for people who see this interview later, know that this book will be available, uh, and I think you should buy it.
right.
Anyone who's listening, because it's really a fine mixture, an anthology of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and some experimental writing too. So
Hmm.
I, um,
Yeah,
I'm
and
a
it's
big,
available for purchase at Village Books. So villagebooks.com, spring and all. They have plenty of copies on hand.
well, I would also like to recommend, though this is not supposed to be necessarily an advertisement for your book, but I would like to recommend this book as well. And I would love for you to read some of it so that those who are listening and watching can get a sense of what kind of writer you are. So you are a publisher and a writer. Would you mind doing that?
Sure, I can read a little bit.
Okay, great.
This is one of the lighter moments of the book. And this is my husband and I having a conversation in a hotel room in Cambodia. We settled into our hotel, and Ray and I began the now familiar process of researching what kinds of adventures we could have. Look at this, Ray said, turning his laptop toward me. Oh, we have to go there. Without telling the kids too much, Ray and I took the boys to lunch at a place specializing in rural Cambodian cuisine. The restaurant served as a training ground for former street youth or those who came from other marginalized and at-risk groups. I made sure RJ and Tyler both saw tarantula on the menu. After an initial shock, the boys were game to try the deep-fried tarantula appetizer. Tyler even decided to embrace this culinary experience and ordered the red tree ant soup. What do tarantulas taste like? RJ asked the waitress as we placed our order. Chicken, the waitress said without missing a beat. None of us expected her next question. Do you want to see live tarantulas? Like before they're cooked? Ray asked. Yes, we have some to hold. Okay, Ray answered with a mixed anticipation and hesitation before I could even wrap my mind around being at the same table with live tarantulas. The waitress returned to our table a few minutes later with a small white saucer and an upside down cup in hand. She set the plate on the table, then lifted the cup to reveal 2 tarantulas the size of eggs, cuddled together with their spindly black legs intertwined. Are they alive? I asked, wondering aloud what we all feared. Yes. The waitress picked one up and held it out for us to take. My adrenaline spiked as Ray tentatively extended his hand while asking, is it safe? Do they bite? Only if threatened, but their venom is weak. She placed one spider and then the second in Ray's open hands, none of us questioning her definition of weak. I pulled out my camera to document the dread creeping over Ray's face as one spider crawled up his arm, headed right for the gap between his sleeve and flesh, perhaps to nestle in the warmth of his armpit. Okay, you can take them back, Ray said, his eyes imploring the waitress to remove the spiders. Does anyone else want to hold them? Our heads all shook in unison. There was no way the rest of us would touch those spiders. A few minutes later, she returned with a plate of 3 deep-fried tarantulas and a side of black pepper lime sauce. Who in the world determined that black pepper and lime were the perfect accompaniment to tarantula? We each broke off a deep brown leg, dipped it in the sweet tangy sauce, and tentatively bit into the appendage. They had the crunch and taste of overcooked French fries. Then we turned to the spider's abdomen. When cutting the rubbery body part proved futile, Ray and Ty each took a hold of a spider belly and popped the whole thing into their mouths in one go. They chewed and finally grabbed their drinks and washed down the masticated bodies. Well, I asked. Definitely didn't taste like chicken, Ray said, with flecks of the black body and hair lodged between his teeth. More like digested insects, Tyler added.
I think when I read your book that I just kind of skimmed over that because I didn't want to hear all the details, but now I really enjoyed the details. And I see what a fearless explorer of the world you are. And I'm really glad you're part of the literary and publishing scene. And I admire you a great deal. And thanks for talking with all of us interested in red wheelbarrow writing today.
Oh, thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Lisa. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.